What are your voting rights when you go to the polls to vote early or go to the polls to vote on election day? There are state election laws and federal election laws that apply to all voters. So in this video, I'm going to focus only on the federal laws, but you should absolutely check into your state voting laws as well, because those will also apply to you. And at the end of this video, I'm going to give you 2 phone numbers to call if you see or if you are the victim of voter rights violations. Federal law says you have the right to vote without being intimidated by anyone else. It is a federal crime to intimidate, threaten, or coerce any person for the purpose of intervening with a person's right to vote. You cannot threaten a voter with physical or financial harm if they do not vote a certain way. You cannot prevent qualified voters from voting by lying about time, date, or place of an election. And in some states, it is also illegal to wear apparel with political slogans or logos in voting locations. It's also a federal crime to intimidate or threaten a poll worker. Do not do that. Those people are just there doing their job. Now that that's cleared up, what are your other rights? Obviously, you have to be registered to vote. Some states do allow you to register and vote on the same day, election day, but most states do have a registration deadline, which may have already passed in your state. So that's up to you to figure out. If you are voting on election day, you need to make sure you are voting in the right precinct where you are assigned, unless your state has like a vote center where all registered voters are allowed to cast a ballot. What should you bring with you to vote? Well, every state has different rules, but most do require you to show some form of identification before being allowed to vote. That may be an ID, but it also may be some other form of documentation to prove you live in that county or district. You may also want to bring your sample ballot with you so you can pre-plan how you want to vote on the issues. It just makes things run much faster. When you show up to the polling place, depending on the time of day, it may be busy, so you're going to have to wait in line. Make sure you bring water for yourself and give yourself plenty of time, because those lines could get really long. But generally, if you are in line and the polls close, stay in line. You do have the right to vote. Now, if you show up to a precinct and the poll worker says you are not assigned to that location, you have 2 options. 1, you can leave that polling location and drive over to the correct polling precinct where you were assigned and cast your ballot there. Or 2, you can stay in that current precinct and vote, but you will have to ask for a provisional ballot. And if you show up to the correct precinct and you know you're registered, but for some reason your name does not appear in their voting roll, you can also ask for a provisional ballot and vote there. By federal law, all polling locations have to be fully accessible to older adults, those with disabilities, and federal law says those who have difficulty reading or writing in English may receive in-person assistance at the polls from a person of their choosing. That person could be a family member, a friend, or a poll worker. It cannot be an employer or an agent of an employer. Now, what happens if you are a witness or if you are a victim of some kind of federal voting rights violation? You can call the FBI or the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. They will both be out in full force on election day to report federal crimes like threats to voters or threats to poll workers or possible fraud. You can call the FBI at 800-CALL-FBI. And to report civil rights violations, you can call the Justice Department at 800-253-3931.